Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing, one of the fastest growing real estate investing podcasts in the world. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors? Find out what got them to where they are now. Get insight into their daily habits and take these insights to inspire your own growth. Each episode, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor and the founder of Streamline, a data-driven, investor-friendly, independent real estate brokerage located in Madison, New Jersey. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, this is the free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Thanks for showing up for another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. Our guest today is Jon Wells, a managing partner, real estate investor, and wealth strategist with over 25 years in real estate investment. He specializes in helping individuals achieve early retirement and build sustainable generational wealth. He's looking for a better way, and that's the company that he works at. We're going to get into it right now. This is episode 289 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Jon Wells. Jon is a real estate matchmaker, syndicator, and realtor with A Better Way Realty, also a managing partner at Alpha Network. He's involved in a lot of asset classes, which we're going to talk about. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to hear what you've been up to, and I've been following you a little bit. Sounds like you have a rich background yourself in single family, so very
man. I mean, these, as I said, it's always just two real estate investors talking, and it's very interesting to always find out where you started. Why did you first get into real estate? Because that really set off, the snowball effect that led to all these years in it.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I was originally a life insurance guy, which I hated. That was my first job after college, and my son was born, which put a lot of pressure on me to, figure it out quickly. Well, my dad was a real estate developer, and then my uncle and grandfather were realtors in the UK. Yeah. So it's a, long history of real estate in the background there.
And you still wanted to get into it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it was sort of one of those things, a little bit different than your past, from what I've gathered, is, you had sort of a father/mentor, kind of in a sense, holding your hand and getting you into deals. I was a little bit more on the outside of the programming that my dad had done. He was a resort developer, and so from childhood, I would be wandering around developments and land, and he actually hired me and a crew of that I was with to clear the land so they could go sell it. And they were cutting roads, and we would clear all the debris and the trees and stuff off the land that he was doing. So I had hoped that there was going to be a mentorship there, but I think after 30 years, I think he was done, with that, and lost all the enthusiasm. There was no more air in the balloon, So
yeah, just get these things built, get the roads cleared, sell them, be done with it, move to the next, or stop.
So my hand holding mentorship unfortunately wasn't there, but I did find a mentor in 2010 after I'd been in real estate for a while, who funded my first fix and flips, and he and I became good friends. He was older than me, and he and I are still close. Kind of a father figure that I needed. He provided capital, and then he gave me guidance on getting into bigger and better investments, more income driven investments. So I learned a lot from him, and that's Jim Flint with A Better Way Realty. So I'm still there. He's the managing broker over there.
Before you started in the fix and flips, were you investing, or were you just on the realtor side for those first several years?
I invested pretty early. It's funny, they weren't great investments, because and what's funny about trying to do fix and flips, I was thinking about this right before we got on here.
Yeah.
Is you don't want to have a short-term goal on a long-term investment. And I learned that, pretty quickly. 2000 timeframe, we were trying to do builder flips. And so you go in contract with the builder, and the builder, continues to build and raise their prices. And by the time the building is done, you think, okay, I can make a quick 30, 50 grand. Well, that works unless there's more inventory.
Yeah. Works a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
works on occasion, but not every time. So I ended up moving into one of those. So that was pretty early on. And so I got my real estate license in the mid to late 90s. I didn't really sell my first property till late 90s.
While you had your license, I mean, I think this happens for everybody. I always say now to like my agents and all my friends, like, I don't understand realtors who don't invest. You have all the access. You're looking at it every day. It's like an accountant who doesn't want money. You're looking at everybody else's money. What finally got you, besides this, obviously you had that first property and you had to figure it out. But was that what it was for you? You're like, well, these investors are crushing it. Why isn't this me?
Well, yeah, I think everybody, when you're, again, it's sort of like having inside information,
Yeah.
is what you're referring to it. And, you got all the keys to the kingdom, and why wouldn't you want to own? I think even during when I was taking classes for my real estate license, I was like, oh, I want to be that guy that buys the fourplex, and
Yeah.
house hacks. I mean, nobody even knew what house hacking was
Yeah.
25 years ago. But yeah, wanted a house hack, and didn't really go down the multifamily road. I was doing more single family. So my first property I bought in, I think right around 2000, and it had a basement that I wanted to finish. And I was really into the idea of fixing and flipping and adding values. I did get in there. I hired a friend of a friend, to do the basement. It took forever, but I added some value there. And I was able to sell it because I bought it right. And I think I sold it within the first year or so. So again, I was kind of feeling my way around on how to make money, with this investment idea. And all the way up until, one of my last flips, I was still trying to figure out how to make money, because any wrong turn you make on a flip is going to end up being a hold, so I created the term fix and flop. And so my fix and flops perform better than my fix and flips because I held them for a lot longer.
I find that, I mean, I flipped a lot in my life, but just not as much recently. One, there's not inventory to do it in New Jersey. Regular home buyers are buying it. And also, I just find, like, if I have a project manager when I'm doing it, because I can't be on site every day, I'll just go crazy. I just don't have the temperament for mistakes. And a flip is literally like 600 mistakes a day. I mean, like, I just can't. That's why I mean, when you're talking to newer investors now or new people and they're like, yeah, well, I'd like to start by flipping. To me, I'm always like, you should just punch yourself in the face a bunch of times. It seems like you're going to like that better, because if you don't have any guidance and you're just going to do that, you're for sure going to mess it up. If you buy right, you could still make money, but like you could have made so much more money, because it's such like a debilitating process.
It really is. It was a whole nother language.
Yeah.
Maybe the better avenue would have been, and what I had tried to do a few times was to find, a builder that would partner with me. And then, I think a lot of them are called contractors because it starts with the word con. And so there you go. They'd love to take your money, and they're horrible business people, and they like to steal and cheat and, be unloyal.
And those new flippers are ripe for it. I mean, they're basically like just hiring the first contractor that they find, and the cheapest, which is never a good sign. And then like, I wonder wait, they haven't showed up in 6 days and now they're not even in the state. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, it kind of almost gives me PTSD thinking about all the contractors that, got away with something and, couldn't perform and never really finished on time and went over budget. Some of them were there just to simply create more work for themselves,
Yeah.
So finding the reputable contractor, I think, was something that I didn't want to pay for, but I ended up paying for it, because I had to do things 2 or 3 times to get it done right. So yeah, a lot of those flips turned into flops, but I would say 20% of the flips that I did ended up being holds and ended up doing a lot better. And I started looking at that going, wow, if I could just hold this thing and make, 5 or 10%, a year, that's more than what I wanted to make on the flip. So why wouldn't I just, fix and hold or just hold properties? So eventually got into group home investing and traded up from really small homes, that were in foreclosure back in 08, 2009, 10, 11. And then, learned a lot from my clients. I think that's one of the things that is a little bit unique is when you're a realtor, you get to learn from your clients who are, might be, have a better business plan, have a better thesis than you do because you're out running around showing houses. So yeah, I learned from a couple of really smart investors, and some of them we bought out of state, doubled my money in Arizona, Green Valley or something like that, Arizona, below near Tucson. I bought a couple properties there, and we doubled our money in a couple of years. It was crazy.
Were those on just kind of like hanging on to it, renting, or those were group homes also?
Those were single family homes, and we were buying. I mean, you could buy a single family home, a brick, fully bricked house in Green Valley, Arizona, for about $100,000 back then, and I sold mine for $250 in a couple of years. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always say a lot of I mean, just personally, I think when I was younger, I just wanted to turn things around quicker. I just had no patience, even though my dad was like the king of patience, like holding things 30, 40 years, could care less. Like, oh, it's just land, leave it there. But it's just like, you want to make more money quicker. And I think that's like the FIRE movement now. Like what are you running to? You want to be 30 and retired? What are you going to do? But I guess like now that I'm older, I can relax a little more and I see it like for what I didn't know then. Do you find it the same way after so many different types of real estate? You can kind of look at it and be like, I made a lot of poor decisions back then because I just was rushing.
Yeah. What's funny about the poor decisions in real estate is they make every other poor decision sound like a great idea. I mean, I've done crypto. I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars playing that game.
Yeah.
Stocks are about the same. I always seem to FOMO in at the wrong time, and then it drops 25%. So real estate is kind of a safe haven for me. Even my bad decisions turn out to be, fixable, where other things maybe not so much. But
yeah, and as you said, especially if you just hold on just a little bit, like if you just relax and leave it. I mean, honestly, you could buy a property pretty much anywhere in America. If you just waited 5 years, you're going to be making money, barring like an environmental disaster or something, or like you pick Flint, Michigan, and then they have a water thing. Like generally, it's just going to appreciate over time. And worst case scenario, you're still going to be at rent ready. So it's just one of those things where, I don't know, I guess we just all wanted to turn properties over and build the snowball a little too quick.
Sure. Yeah, I can reflect on that a little bit because I owned, my first flip was actually in 2005, right before, the meltdown. And I remember, putting my 20% down, fixing it up and spending, 50, 75 grand to make it a nice property. Thinking that I was going to make some money on the flip. And I was in it for the contractor who looked like he needed a job. And I was in it, for me, because I was kind of getting some cheap labor, and trading up for a place where he could stay, which, maybe I'd never do that again. But
maybe that sounds like the beginning of your group home journey, though. It's really that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. The people that really needed it. Yeah. But yeah, so that specific deal, my renter just carried me through, through the whole downturn. So I think it was 2013 when I finally ended up breaking even on the equity. It took a lot of years after the downturn, but the renter got me there, and I was really happy. And I kept that place rented until I think 2 years ago, and I sold it and made a big pop there and threw that into a group home.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, the tangibility of real estate has always mattered to me because I grew up walking so many homes. But I think for people who are wondering, should I go stocks? Should I try some crypto? It's all leverage risk depending on how much you know. I find those other to be more risky. But there's just something about being able to say, even if you invest out of state, like if you wanted to fly and go there, you could just fly and look at it. It's right there. You can touch it. You can make it better. And if it burns down, you have insurance and you own the land. So you like own assets. I've always been really good at stocks, but they're still just like it's just like air to me.
Yeah,
I can't do anything. What am I do? Call the CEO?
You mentioned something that I really that's gelling with me, and that is investing in what you know versus what you don't know. And I don't know what it is about these intangibles, but they're very difficult because when you're looking for instant gratification, it's there. Or when you start doubting yourself and you have buyer's remorse, it's hard not to just click the button and say, oh, well, now I'm out, but then it goes up 20%, and then you kick yourself. So But I think having a longer term horizon, no matter what you're doing, no matter what kind of investing you're doing, and investing for the long run is just, it gives you some space to breathe and also to make mistakes, and everything's going to be fine. But I think that's what I've learned more than anything, is trying to learn the patience game. I wasn't born with it for sure.
Yeah, that's just not part of us, most of us. But don't you think part of patience comes with also diversification of assets, trying a few, and then, as you were saying before, figuring out, like, hey, which are you best at? Which do you like? I mean, a lot of people are like, hey, I want to get a couple rental properties. I'm like, do you want to manage people? They're like, oh, I'm not a people person at all. I'm like, well, there goes 10%.
Sure.
Like, they're just thinking kind of like, hey, they read half of a book or, a YouTube clip, and they're ready to go. But I think real estate is both less complicated and more complicated than people think, because there's so many different pieces of it that you can really suck at, and that will lose you money.
Right. No, and if you can be a special, if you can build a niche or become a specialist in any area, then you're going to do great. Even if it's, I mean, I have people that I've met within the last few months that were developers and contractors and realtors and all these things. They wear all these different hats. And they've done it right, and they must have built the margins in there. My issue was, having such slim margins that I felt like I had to cut corners and, save everywhere that I could, and it ended up coming, back and biting you in the end. So you got to learn to budget, and you got to learn to hire the right people, and and then again, just I think the long term strategy is going to always win in any market, really.
Yeah. Hey, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying this episode with Jon Wells. And if you're looking for that better way and you're out in the Denver area, this is Denver real estate investing classes, investing opportunities, buying or selling your home. Jon has got you covered. Go to abetterwayrealty.com. Let's get back to the show. Why group homes? Was it the availability of these kind of oddity houses that work for group homes, and the prices? They don't work for everybody, I know that. Or was it like, hey, this group home system looks like a system that can work, from somebody that you may have met?
It was interesting because I think at the time I had a handful of smaller rentals that I had that were, these holds that I ended up with. And, normally, in order to do a 1031 exchange, you need to go up in value and go up in the loan amount and things in order to qualify. So I was looking to go supersize. Well, I met people that needed large homes, and they were paying a premium to get those homes. So my last fix and flip ended up being a group home because I had overspent, hired the wrong contractor, had to pull the permits that I didn't really want to pull, but pulled all the permits, and spent, $50,000 more than I wanted to. So I had to kind of rent it. Otherwise I was going to lose money. I missed the mark, missed the timing. And I had a rule back then that if you have a 3 or 6 month, flip, process, that's fine. As soon as you go into 7th month, you're not going to be able to make it because you missed the market. There's no way to land in the buy zone during the time frame, as far as hitting the market at the right time. So I missed the market, met my group home operator, and that was their 3rd group home. And now I have one group home operator having, 4 properties that they rent from me, and they pay a significant amount of rent. And so,
okay. So your group home model is you get the home, you get it ready, you rent to one of these companies that does it. Yeah. So we've had group home shows before. We've done both models. We've done owner operator, where they own and operate it, which I found to be really interesting. This is a more passive model, though. You're kind of getting it ready for group home, which means a lot of bedrooms, a lot of bathrooms, common areas, and that's why I say it's kind of an odd house that works.
Yeah, they're big homes. Yeah, like our Denver squares, like they're bigger. It was funny because for a while I was like, all my homes are bigger than where I live. It's a little scary to think about. But
there's so many bedrooms. Like, what are you doing with all these bedrooms? Because I always see, obviously you're a realtor, I'm a realtor. You always see these group homes on the market, but they're like on the MLS. It's just not for regular people. And then you have investors call you who don't understand. You're like, no, it's not what you think. You're not going to cash flow unless you understand it. So they sit around a lot. But for people who understand it, it's a no-brainer, especially if you do it your way. You have it set up, and then you find the provider who just wants to put in more, and they run the whole system. You collect rent.
Yeah, they pay so much per room, and they know what they can make on each room or on each individual resident. So yeah, they manage all the residents. I don't have any contact with them.
Yeah,
And I think they have an interesting agreement with them because they don't even have tenant rights. They have more of a membership program, for the operator. And so
Smart.
if they fall off the wagon or they go a little crazy or whatever and do something they're not supposed to do, they have to be out of there in 48 hours. So
it must be like a licensee agreement instead of,
I haven't actually seen one of them, but I would like to read it. But I'm pretty sure it's just a membership agreement, kind of like Pad Split. Have you heard of Pad Split?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different. It's funny though, because you were talking about house hacking before it was house hacking, and now we're here with like these Pad Split models. But somebody like my dad was doing all of this stuff. It just didn't have a name, and there was no internet or TikTok to like create something viral off of it. For everybody I know who grew up then, and even for myself, like we're just like, these are just smart ways to make money. Every person who house hacked before it was a term was just like, I'm just trying to pay down my expenses.
Right. No, I mean, if you can turn anything into a cash flow, I mean, I love the Robert Kiyosaki reference to, trade your credit for cash flow, trade your cash for cash flow, whatever you can do for cash flow and play the cash flow game.
Yeah.
That was a great lesson, I think, kind of learning, how to convert whatever you've got into a consistent cash flow. So right now I'm actually in the process of being in a scenario where I have more equity than I would prefer to have, or more equity than I can charge for. So my return on equity is too low. Even with my operator, they're starting to buy the homes. So luckily I have a buyer built, for these slightly awkward houses. They are really big and not really designed for, single family
it's like
living anymore.
Yeah, you can only get the appropriate price from someone who wants to use it the way it is, or else you're going to get a drastic drop for someone who wants to turn it into a beautiful single family, which it would be, but that's going to be like 300 grand, to get rid of all the, weirdness of having so many bedrooms and baths and all of these, common spaces that aren't really traditional living rooms.
Yeah, it's a little different with the operator that I work with. All I really had to do is add egress windows, and there are a lot of bedrooms, but we're not adding a lot of bedrooms. We're not doing Pad Split where we take a living room or a dining room and turn it into a bedroom.
Yeah,
we did it a couple of times for some people, but still, we work with the program and we work with the architecture that's already there. That was why I like the mental health and sobriety home more than I like
much needed.
Yeah, it's definitely a needed thing. And the operators are really humble. I mean, I literally showed up to one of my places, one of my earlier group homes, and I didn't know what kind of reaction I was going to get because I was the landlord. I was there just to probably check on some stuff.
Yeah.
I think we're maybe adding some, lights or something. I can't remember. But when I went there, literally, I got like a lineup of people that wanted to give me a hug and say, thank you. You saved my wife's life, or you saved my life, or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is a feel-good relationship as well. So,
yeah, I think, we were talking earlier just about the news in general, but I feel like the news puts such a sour taste like on real estate investors, like we're all slumlords trying to screw everybody over for money. And they're definitely, obviously there's people in the business who do that, but there's so many ways. If you just go back to just being a regular landlord, a one-to-one landlord, you can really help somebody. And I think people forget that when they're thinking we're raising everybody's rent, 2x every year. It's like, providing housing when there's a housing shortage is big. And especially for these group options where people like, if not, they're going to be on the street. And all you need to do is go to some of the larger cities to see like there's a lot of people on the street. So these things are really necessary.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting is, I'm getting to know some of the build to rent builders, developers out there. And it's kind of sad, that the first time buyer product is kind of not even being, built anymore. I think, I can't remember his name now, but there's this concept of the forever renter. And, the first time buyer product is just not even being built. So I think it's, there's this thing that's going on with the economy where first time buyers are kind of getting left in the dust. And that is a very soft market. In Colorado, we've seen 20 and 30 40% drops in condos, which is weird because, it's that way in a recession. But I think right now it's just that demographic is being kind of, they missed the boat, and they have to rent. And so they need a place to rent. So make it nice. And, there's builders building entire communities now for that demographic. So.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I feel like they're going to swing too much. Everyone's going to start doing BTR. And then at some point, of course, it's going to shift back. Rates will get better. There's more opportunity. Maybe people are making more money. Who knows with the economy? It's up and down every day. But it's still like, it's the same thing. Like with multifamily syndications, everyone went crazy, and then there was a problem because it's just like people just can't control themselves, just stay in the middle, like just relax a little bit. But I guess it's because it's so many people doing it that it just becomes this kind of, herd mentality when I would be worried. I love BTR. I think it's a great strategy and I think it's very good for right now. I don't know if it's going to be as good in 5 years. I doubt it,
True. Yeah. I mean, we have one investor that I was about ready to put money with. I may or may not still, but he's buying a condo complex, small one. I think it's like 25 unit condo complex, and he's just going to He's going to do a condo conversion, because it just makes sense. So you can always do that. I think that as a developer, you can just sell some of the single families. I would assume they could do that since they're not deeded individually, but I think it's probably not a big stretch for you to start just selling homes if you needed to.
Yeah, I mean, on the small scale, I think a lot of people, at least in New Jersey, they buy a 2, 3, 4 family, and then they condoize it. They're going to make money. You just got to hang on to it for a little bit, fix everything, make sure you've done everything right for the regulations. And then you can really make a nice windfall. And then you can provide that first time buyer opportunity. I mean, here it's probably too expensive because everything's too expensive here. But
right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everything's kind of relative.
What's a first time buyer home sell for in New Jersey?
I mean, honestly, probably like $650.
Yeah.
There's parts of the state that sell lower, but across the board, it's probably like $650. I mean, it could be, maybe the average is like somewhere in the high fives, but in these parts, northern New Jersey, it's probably, 7s or 8s, which is crazy.
I liked your story about, about housing and about just getting to know your tenant. It was something that I was really enjoying for a long time, but I always made the mistake of renting to people that I knew, and then they sort of take advantage or.
Yeah. It's a very uncomfortable thing because, I've been there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you guys I listened to your story with your dad and you would allow people to stay for years, without charging rent. I think that's just crazy.
That was on foreclosures. So my dad would buy foreclosures, back in the day where it was very easy to buy them. We would go by, if it was occupied, we would knock, we would build a relationship, and then he would kind of get the lay of the land. We would either play insurance company or whatever. I don't know. We played so many different games. He basically taught me to be a good liar.
Oh, wow.
But for the right reasons. Well, because you don't want someone to freak out, because at some point they all freak out in the foreclosure process, even 2 years into the thing when we're letting, it took so long to get them out. This was New York. It was always hard to get them out, but it was easier back then at a point. At a point, they just moved them out, but sometimes that was like 2 years. But yeah, I mean, it is a hard thing, I think, for new people to understand that you're going to be the best landlord if you know your tenants, but also a lot of people get into it so they can have a buffer between. And sometimes that's where partners help. My sister and I managed a bunch of properties after my dad passed away where she was better at some things, I was better at some things, and we kind of used our skills that way. Unfortunately, like neither of us wanted to be the people person. I didn't want to go back to those days. But it's interesting how people find, as we were talking about before, which things will work for them. Because you have to pay a lot for property management if you're just like, oh, I don't like people. And then you still have to manage the manager to make sure your money's going in the right direction.
True. Yeah, I think turning something into a passive investment is ultimately what everybody wants. And I think that's one of the goals that I have right now. I mean, group home investing has been the best decision I've made since I had single families. I don't get the weekend calls. I don't get the midnight phone calls that something's broken or somebody's in the alley, or whatever, knocking on the door. Those are the most disturbing phone calls, because you literally have to stop everything you're doing to cater to your client. Your client really is your tenant, really. But yeah, so that was one of the best things I've done. My group home operators take care of the place. They don't call for, silly little oddball broken things. And you can do a triple net, lease on those. And then they're acting like the owner, really. So then a lot of times we'll put an option agreement together. So then they get some of the upside as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just smart strategy. I was thinking like these just sound like triple net, regular big commercial triple net, the easiest thing out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been a niche that I built, but I'll tell you the hardest thing I have had to accomplish is trying to meet new operators. It's such a close-knit environment.
Yeah.
All these operators seem to know each other and they're in such competition. It's amazing how competitive they are, and they don't want to share any secrets. They don't want to give me any referrals. I mean, every once in a while I get a referral, and a lot of times they already have their posse and their team,
right. Yeah. Like, are you sure about that referral? Are you giving me like the worst referral? I feel like it's like that in elder care right now, because I feel like that's a really, really hot industry with the population aging so rapidly. Like, yeah, that makes it kind of harder and not fun. But you just try to build your own group of people that and like you said, now you have one group who's operating 4 of them, and that's great. And then they have the option to buy. So I've always said, this obvious as a realtor, I've always said to like newer realtors, I said, listen, everyone's going to feed you all this thing that you need to do all this cold calling and get 100 leads. Like if you just found one investor in your whole career, just one investor who was well qualified and had money, you could focus all your time on one person. You'd do more deals than 95% of the realtors out.
It's really funny, that you mentioned that, because I've had hundreds of clients, over the years, and I am so bad at keeping in communication with them. They're literally calling me, and I'm still barely keeping up with it. So I either need to build a team or build a process or hire someone. But the keeping in touch and building it out and, really, really following through. I just don't want to be the guy that calls them when they don't want to be, when they don't want to hear from me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sell them stuff that they don't want to buy, things like that. So, but, I think putting video out there, getting content out there, it allows people to then go, oh, John's a realtor. I forgot about him. Let's call him. And I do get the calls, as soon as I put, content out there, all of a sudden the phone rings, like, oh, we haven't seen you in a long time. So it's nice to get those random phone calls when you don't expect them. So that's why these meetings are so important.
Yeah. But it's like there's so much chase involved in what people train realtors to do. And then you'll talk to someone and they're like, oh, yeah, I mean, my dad's friend, he owns 37 properties. Like all you should do all day is talk to him. Like go over, start working that relationship. Oh, but maybe I won't get a deal for 6 months. Well, what are you getting from your Ojo leads? Nothing. You don't even know what you're doing. Like that's why investors are so great. Instead of the people who you sell the house, they're not going to transact for another, 5 to 10 years. Investor closes one. He's like, cool, I'm ready for another. Right. That's where you can get the repeat business. And that's what I've always found interesting about the kind of relationship between realtors and real estate investors. And for those of us on both sides, I personally understand it because I remember when I didn't have my real estate license and I was an investor, I was like, boy, realtors suck. I mean, then I became a realtor and I was like, realtors suck generally, just percentage wise. But the few that understand investors and know how to work with them, they're really like invaluable. You just can't beat it.
Yeah, it's funny you said that on another podcast. You said realtors suck. And I've had the exact opposite. I've only come across 1 or 2 realtors that were just like,
I got to come to Denver.
I mean, they had like 2, they had one, I want to say like a logo on an email, and then his logo on his contract was something completely different with a totally different company. I'm like, I'm not even going to bring it up, I'm just going to kind of get through this deal with this guy. But everybody else just seemed to be like a good business person. They'll sit down with you. I mean, I have a lot of respect for realtors. I've been doing this for
I do too. I just like the good ones. I feel like at least the bar to entry is so low that I think people get in and they don't have the mindset to help people. So they have commission breath, which is obviously very common. It's okay if you want the commission, but if you want the commission more than you want to help someone, of course that's going to be an imbalance and they're going to feel it. And then you're not going to have a future client. So I've always been focused on, like you were saying, like future client, build relationships for life. But again, I learned that from meeting tenants when I was 10, and then knowing them when I was 20, and then still managing them after my dad passed away. We had tenants for, 30 years, which is crazy, but, we did. And honestly, their rent was terrible, but we were just, whatever. They've been there so long. We didn't have to do renovations on the place. It goes to the idea of, if you have a good tenant, you keep them, even if they're a little bit under market, you raise it a little bit, but you don't have to go in and redo it. They're comfortable the way it is.
Yeah, your story reminds me of a gentleman that we've worked with, and he was approaching late 70s when we finally convinced him to do some triple net deals, and we bought some Family Dollars for him and traded his properties for some triple net. It was, at the time, it was a decent return, 6, 7, 8%.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, when borrowing rates are at 9 or whatever 8%, you can't really do much with that. But it was an interesting story, and he had a number of properties that had been vacant for 6 months to a year, and he'll eventually get to it. And he had a funny story about, well, I don't advertise my garages because I need all my garages for all my stuff. And he had a car collection, and he's just really inefficient with his.
Yeah, it's not a great way to make money.
No, it's hilarious. But we got him in, and all of a sudden he was, making 3-4 times, what he was making because of all the vacancy and all the inefficiencies. So it's kind of fun to look into someone's business plan if they even have a plan.
Yeah, but to your point, it does take a while to get someone who's used to, hey, well, this is the way I do business. It's like when you're buying mom and pop self-storage, they're just comfortable. They don't want to change, but you can change the business and 3x it. But like for that person, once you show them how easy triple net is, and like, you're just going to get a check. That's right. It. There's nothing else to it. You just get money.
All their time, it's going to be like a vacation. What do I do on vacation? I haven't taken a vacation in 30 years. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Or they're like, well, what happens, when the Arby's bathroom breaks? Arby's fixes it. They're responsible for everything. What if a car crashes into Arby's? Like, it's just like, because we owned like this weird triple net Arby's in Carson City, Nevada. So I always use like Arby's as an example. But yeah, it's quick money.
Yeah. Arby's, McDonald's, any of those big companies, they don't want to have all their money tied up in real estate. It is a fairly high barrier to entry, product.
Yeah.
And then you have to get financing, and then you're on the hook or whatever, for whatever, any downturns. But yeah, it's funny that a lot of the shift in my mental shift really was learning about getting a business inside of your property. That's a commercial deal. It doesn't matter if it's in a single family home or if it's in a triple net, warehouse. It's having a business rent from you, and then it's a long-term lease. And the terms are just so much better in commercial. So it's been a great transition. I'm learning a ton even now. I'm in the middle of a multifamily meltdown mentorship scenario.
Yeah.
So all I did really is learn that I'm not going to invest in multifamily, but I learned a lot about, the number crunching and the underwriting and syndications. And so that's what I'm going to do with all of my properties that have more equity than I can charge for. Because I just don't have the stomach to say, hey, you've been my renter for 5 years, but I'm going to have to increase your rent by $1,000 a month, just because, my loan is adjusting, and either I have to sell or you have to buy it, or, it's a tough contemplation for them because they're, kind of newer on the home owning, scene. So
it is, landlording's tough. I just do remember the first time my dad asked me to collect rent, I just basically hid for a week. He's like, well, did you get anything done? He's like, looks like you're still, I would be working out of his loft. He's like, I didn't see you drive to the properties. So I'm like, He's like, did you even call them? I'm like, no. He's like, well, just drive by. Like he knew that once I met people, I'm better. I'm just better in person. I don't like the phone. I don't talk on the phone ever. I only do I'll do Zooms. Or this is great for me because it's much easier. It's kind of low pressure, but I feel like it's better to see people face to face. And then I feel like even my worst nightmare never comes true in person. the people are usually always nice.
Right.
Yeah. And then you feel bad. So
Right.
that's a trade-off. Wow, they're really nice. I can't raise their rent. I'm going to lose money on this. But yeah, so I mean, if someone comes to you now, now we're recording this on August 28th, and they say, say they're qualified, they have enough money. What asset class would you tell someone to start with if they could just start? Would you want them to get into something more passive, or would you try to get them to see active, or it does depend on their appetite?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I heard you say something about, why wouldn't you just get into a passive investment to get in and learn, and honestly, that's kind of where I am. Transitioning from residential into commercial, I've got some, but this is kind of my real true entry into it. And I'm going to do it right because I've done everything wrong so far. So, I can't make any more big mistakes. I think if you're starting, I mean, you just have to start, and if you know somebody that does, industrial commercial, and you can get in for, into one of their partnerships, come up with 50 grand if you've got it, and do something like that. If you're more of a handy person and you want to do, a flip house and you could build value, it really just depends on, how much you have and who you know. But I think the who you know piece for me was really important because I was able to just follow somebody right into a very, very stable, a very, very rewarding environment. And I was able to, just grow into that over the last, 7-8 years. And it was seamless, completely seamless, because I just, had somebody that I could follow.
Yeah.
So
And
I think that's a key.
Yeah, I would just add to that. It's who you trust. Obviously, and then you trusted. That's why you knew you could go down. But a lot of people get to the know stage and they're like, "It's Bobby." So what do you know about Bobby? I mean, nothing. I met him at one meetup. Oh, well, we're doing a flip together. I mean, that's a little early. You're getting married on the first day too. Like, this is just like, you need to pump the brakes here. Because I mean, we've all made partnership mistakes. I certainly have. But it was because I was, like, hey, this sounds great. It sounds like too good to be true. And, in some cases it was. Because I didn't do more due diligence to be sure on the trust end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you spoke about two things that I personally struggle with. And one is trust. And how do you trust and who do you trust? And then the other one was, I think just the due diligence of getting there. And what questions can you ask? What's the wrong question to ask? A syndication or a GP, that you might want to put money with, and what are the things that you can ask for? So I just recently met with a client from 15 years ago who bought multiple properties, and he was kind enough to give me his checklist of what he asked GPs before he sends any money, and it's really long. I mean, I was going through it just before this. And it's pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff, and so I feel, like I can go to him and say, well, what exactly are you going for? What exactly? How do I narrow this down? But also, what are you after? What is the whole reasoning you're asking all these questions? Well, I think you're trying to de-risk anything you're doing. When you're giving somebody money, I mean, some of those PPMs are ridiculous. You read them and you're like, oh, I literally just put some money into a hard money fund. And it literally said the CEO can commit fraud and I have no recourse. It's like, oh, wow.
Great. I've seen a few things like that. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's where the trust part comes in, and also your personal appetite for risk, what you find risky and what you value. I learned honestly through this podcast about trusted operators and who I can invest with. I don't think I do that. I certainly don't have a list like that. I mean, I'm really concerned with only a few things, but I also pass on almost 100% of options that I get. I mean, they come all day, but I don't even really look if I don't know the operator. I actually don't look at all. It makes, why would I?
Right. Well, you have a great network. And, I think not just knowing who you're investing with, but also knowing enough about it to be able to ask the right questions, be able to make it a tactile thing where you can kind of understand it and you don't have to sit there and randomly guess, even the questions to ask. So, you have to know enough about what you're investing in feel comfortable and be able to sleep at night too,
Yeah.
So hard money fund that I put, is a hard money / private money fund. I'm like, well, I used to do loans. I understand the lingo. I understand the jargon. I can get in there and talk the talk and ask the right questions, and they're not going to freak out when I ask too many questions.
I mean, that's the key. When you ask the question, it's really like, what's the response? The good operators are like, have a response right away, and that's whatever it is, bad, good. That's the response. Others, no answer is no money.
Right? Yeah.
If you don't know the answer, we're in trouble.
When you turn away 100% of your deals, where do you go with your money? Are you still doing single family, like just what you know and what you do?
No, I mean, yeah, hundreds the exaggeration, but it's a very, like, I'm in 4 multifamily syndications, about to go into a 5th, but 4 out of the 5 will be with one operator, because I've had a great time with them. We're doing great. So every time a new one comes up, I'm like, this is a no-brainer. I'm like, even tried to cap myself and say like, hey, okay, 4 syndications is enough, relax. And then another one came up. I'm like, this is, I have to do it for my kids. I look at syndications as a way to keep my money out of flipping, stop trying to be so active, park more of it. Cause I'm trying to get back into short-term rentals now, but on a very small scale, just because I'm kind of like it. And I think that's the kind of growth of my investment trajectory. I was active for a long time. Now I'm starting to understand passive, but because I have so much going in passive, at least in my context, it's like, okay, well, I like something a little active where I can have someone who helps me and, is a little bit more fun. I like hospitality. It's not a shiny object thing for me, because I'm not into shiny objects. They're actually, too bright for me, because if everyone's going that way, I'm looking for the object that's absolutely turned off. I'm like, that might be interesting. That's more my style.
Yeah, I mean, when they're shiny, they're complicated. The more and they're also selling you something that
of course. That's why it's shiny. It's neon.
Yeah, it's bright. It's in your face, and you're like, I don't even know the answer to those questions, so maybe I should just send you my money.
Yeah, that's like just leaving the tenant in there for $1,000 under market value. Awesome, man. Well, I've really appreciated speaking to you. Where is the best place for people to get in touch with you?
Well, I do have a few resources, free resources that we can drop in your content, on the link. So we'll provide those. And on LinkedIn, under Jon Wells Realtor, you'll find me, Jon Wells Realtor. You'll see a lot of content that we've been putting out there recently. So really enjoyed this. I hope we can, keep in touch, and I'll listen to some more of your episodes, because I learn a little bit every time I listen to another investor.
Yeah, appreciate it. I always like talking to realtor investors. We can do referrals. We can find mutual clients. And I appreciate your perspective. It's great having you on the show.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was Jon Wells of A Better Way Realty. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. Thanks for sticking around to the end so you can get a preview of who's coming up on episode 290 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And it's Max Emery from Time Capital Bookkeeping and CFO Solutions. Real estate investing bookkeeping built for house flippers and wholesalers, decision-ready financials so you can move fast, stay focused, and grow profits. Can't wait for you to hear the show with Max coming up next time.